There seems to be a little bit of confusion about centric relation and RCP, ICP, and how this relates to the natural dentition and what we're trying to achieve in dentures. So I thought I'd just do a little demonstration just to try and help a little bit if I can. So we've got a model here. When we're thinking about centric relation has nothing to do with teeth. Okay, so we're only thinking about the relationship between the maxilla and the mandible as determined by the position of the condyle assembly. So Dawson and the Dawson Academy have defined centric relation as the most anterior superior position of the condyle disc assembly within the glenoid fossa. So that's anterior and superior. So you'd expect the muscles of mastication to be bracing the condyle assembly up in this direction when they contract and elevate the mandible. And they have a nice picture on their website. Details are there if you want to read more about the specifics of centric relation. So we're approximating on our model because obviously we haven't got a disc in here and so on, but we'd expect in centric relation to have a range of movement, and we're moving about the terminal hinge axis. So centric relation is all of this range of movement here. It's not one specific position of the mandible, it's this range of movement as we rotate around the terminal hinge axis. Because in this terminal hinge axis we're still in centric relation, the condyle is still related here correctly. Okay, when we introduce teeth to the system, like so, we can close, and we're thinking of the natural dentition at the moment. When we introduce teeth to the system, we still have a centric relation, of course, and when we close down, the teeth may mesh together directly, or in most cases, as shown here, they don't. We have an interference to closure, and this is a single tooth contact, and we give that a specific term of retruded contact position, RCP. So as we close down in centric relation, the first point of tooth contact is retruded contact position. Of course, we don't function in that position. Typically, we function in ICP. And to get into ICP, the mandible often has to move slightly forwards, thereby the condyle coming out of centric relation, being pulled forward by lateral pterygoid into ICP. So here, RCP and ICP are not coincident. So once more, closing down in centric relation to RCP, slide forward into ICP. Now when we're making or designing a new occlusal scheme, we don't build in that shift to ICP. We try and get the patient to function with an in-centric relation so that RCP equals ICP, intercuspal position. And that's particularly so with dentures. So when we're designing some dentures, we take a wax registration rim and we record all our measurements, of course, on the wax registration rim. So we start off by determining the labial surface of the anterior teeth and the length of the anterior teeth, so where the incisal edge is going to be. And this is determined pretty much by aesthetics and phonetics, so that the patient looks nice and can speak correctly, so that this portion of the anterior tooth forms a nice seal with the lower lip when necessary and is in the correct position to the upper lip for aesthetics. And we have aids for that, so we can measure from the incisor papilla using one of these gadgets, or we can look at where the incisal edge is relative to the upper lip at rest. And once we've got that correct, we establish the occlusal plane here, typically using one of the inclinators or just a scraper to melt and shape the occlusal plane, and we try and get that parallel to the aleotragal line. So first of all we look at the labial support, then we look at the occlusal plane as it goes back in the mouth to make sure that we're not going to be looking at the occlusal surfaces of the upper teeth, and we're going to get this nice shape to the denture. And of course this surface and this surface are interrelated, so as we adjust the labial surface, sometimes the lip will drop further down if we carve back, so we need to play with this until we get that top block correct. Once we've done the work on the top block, so this labial support and the occlusal plane, we then go on and try and establish the correct vertical dimension. And when we're looking at the vertical dimension, we want to be in centric relation. So we encourage the jaw into centric relation, and then we close down to the correct vertical dimension determined by the amount of freeway space that we have in the dentures, primarily by the amount of freeway space. So we want to achieve a freeway space of somewhere in the order of 2 to 4 millimeters so that's the difference between the patient biting together and then in rest face height. And we do that by putting dots on the nose and chin and measuring and so on with a pair of dividers between here. Or we use a gadget like this called a Willis bite gauge, which goes under the chin and under the nose, and that allows us to take a measurement as well. So we decide on the correct OVD, occlusal vertical dimension, and we close down in centric relation to that predetermined OVD here. And now we call this in dentures RCP. So our retruded contact position in dentures is really the correct OVD when we're in centric relation, and we call that RCP. And of course, when we produce the dentures and set teeth into the wax blocks, we're creating a new ICP which is going to be coincident with centric relation. So to finish the story off, really, what we would do once we've got this vertical dimension established, manipulate the jaw one way or another into centric relation, close down to the correct OVD, and then one way or another we seal the upper and lower wax registration rims together to record this relationship between the mandible and maxilla, and that's the anterior posterior relationship. And of course we've recorded the vertical dimension and the lip support. Of course we'd put the centre line on as well, so we know where to start setting up the teeth. Okay, I hope that clears it up a little bit of what we're trying to do when we're carrying out the occlusal registration stage for complete dentures.